China has been the world champion in electric vehicle production and sales for 8 consecutive years. Chinese EV makers BYD, NIO, Li Auto, and XPeng have been sought after by the capital markets. With a market share of 39% in 2022, the Chinese battery maker CATL is the biggest battery manufacturer for EVs in the world and the pride of Xi Jinping. However, behind the glory, the disconnect between production capacity and market demand, along with government subsidy fraud, has resulted in an overcapacity problem and growing number of zombie cars. Hello, welcome to Leisrealtalk. I'm Lei. In 2008, Elon Musk launched Tesla's first electric car, the Tesla Roadster, sparking a global EV frenzy. The following year, Beijing made the EV industry its strategic priority toward technological dominance and started a national rush. EV companies sprouted everywhere in China. According to statistics from the China National Regulatory Platform for New Energy Vehicles, by March 2019, over 600 EV companies claiming the capacity to manufacture an entire electric car have been registered, of which 450 companies and 5,827 EV models passed government compliance tests. Beijing offered a lucrative subsidy program to push for EV market dominance. Chinese EV manufacturers received subsidies from various levels of the government. Businesses and individuals purchasing electric vehicles also enjoyed tax benefits. The CCP-backed initiative thus took off as if it were on steroids. According to statistics from the China Association of Automobile Manufacturers, in 2020, the production and sales of EVs both reached 1.37 million. In 2021, EV production and sales more than doubled, reaching 3.55 million for both. In 2022, it doubled again. Production reached 7.06 million vehicles, and sales reached 6.89 million. In just 3 years, China's EV production and sales volume expanded fivefold. The world has been amazed at the growth in this new industry and assumed it's due to Chinese consumer demand. But is it? China's EV industry took off by relying heavily on government subsidies, which became a lucrative business. The central government subsidizes 60,000 yuan for EVs with a 250 kilometers driving range. For cars with only an 80,000 kilometer range, Beijing offers 35,000 yuan. In addition, local governments provide 4,800 yuan for plug-in hybrids and 12,600 yuan for pure EVs. So smart businessmen took advantage of the programs and devised a scheme. Subsidy fraud first surfaced in 2016, 4 years after China began offering EV subsidies. The production cost of a low-end EV may only be 50 to 60,000 yuan, but the manufacturer can receive a subsidy of over 60,000 yuan. Some Chinese saw an opportunity here to make money. This is the reason why so many EV companies were established in China. They have 4 ways to make money. First, EV manufacturers set up auto leasing subsidiaries. The leasing companies then buy the EV cars from themselves. The sales transactions entitle the leasing companies to receive government subsidies. Secondly, the manufacturers get manufacturing subsidies. Third, the cars are not driven but are dismantled by the leasing company. The parts are sold back to the EV manufacturer and reused to save production costs. As this cycle repeats, more EVs are produced, sold, and dismantled, and more government subsidies are collected. Fourth, the companies can also make money by selling carbon credits, which are tradable emission quotas earned by surpassing the government-allocated carbon reduction targets. Chinese EV makers have accumulated enormous wealth through these schemes. The EVs they produce are for the sole purpose of getting government subsidies and making money. The quality is poor. After the valuable parts are removed, the shells of the cars are discarded and dumped in EV graveyards. This is the development model for China's rise to world champion of the EV industry and the origin of the EV graveyards. Maybe you will say that this practice can be widespread. Well, an investigation by China's Ministry of Finance in 2016 found that out of the 93 EV companies it investigated, a staggering 72 were involved in subsidy fraud. Why hasn't Beijing issued an order to stamp out the fraud? Isn't China an authoritarian country that orders to stop anything that doesn't please the government's eye? Beijing cannot stamp out the fraud because regime officials at all levels are attached to the impressive growth generated by this abnormal development model. For decades, China's so-called economic miracle has been based on unsustainable growth, whether it's infrastructure building or real estate. The CCP's obsession with GDP growth is the source of this abnormality. During the high subsidy years of 2017 and 2018, China's domestic sales of EV grew by more than 50% and 60% respectively. In the following year, government subsidies started to wane as they were scheduled to be phased out. The subsidy decline led to a 4% decline in EV sales in 2019. In 2020, due to the combined effect of subsidy reduction and the pandemic, EV sales plummeted by over 50% in the first quarter. In response to the drop in sales, in April 2020, Beijing announced that it was extending the subsidy program to the end of 2022. This extension stimulated yet another surge in EV production and sales. EV sales doubled again and grew 108% in 2021 and 93% in 2022. The subsidy programs became a big financial burden on the central and local governments. By the end of 2022, the 30-year program finally ended, but the problem didn't end there. The EV graveyards highlighted the severe disconnect between production and market demand and signaled an overcapacity problem, but this was ignored. In 2021, China produced 5.7 million EVs, sold 3.33 million of them, resulting in a 58% capacity utilization, significantly below the 80% threshold of a normal capacity utilization ratio for the auto industry. Despite the signal of an overcapacity problem, the country is still expanding production, projecting to double capacity to 15 million vehicles by 2024. The majority of EV brands have vanished after the subsidies were ending. In 2022, of the over 400 registered EV makers, only 149 brands had sales, with 49 of them selling fewer than 500 cars. The surviving ones also face serious challenges. The big three, NIO, XPeng, and Li Auto, saw increased deliveries and revenue in 2022, but their losses jumped. NIO's net loss grew 259% in 2022 and reached $1.99 billion, or 14 billion yuan, and XPeng's loss grew 88% and reached $1.26 billion, or 8.5 billion yuan. They are in the predicament of the more cars they sell, the more they lose. Adding salt to the wound is a bitter price war started by Tesla early this year. Tesla, operating at a high profit margin, can afford to cut prices, but the Chinese EV makers cannot. In April, He Xiaopeng, CEO of XPeng Auto, stated that the automotive industry's elimination race had just begun.
In the coming decade, starting from now, we expect to see maybe 8 major companies left in the space, and a lot of the smaller brands or different sub-brands will be merged into bigger corporations, and we will have different kinds of companies out there, and in the end we will end up with several major players.
So let's wait and see how many EV makers will survive among them. This is something that car manufacturers and Wall Street analysts should watch and take as a lesson before they rush to base their planning and business projections on China's growth model. Beijing's hard drive to dominance, the lack of respect for a market economy, and fraudulent practices have turned China's EV industry into another bubble similar to the country's real estate market, not to mention the effect of the discarded cars on the environment. By the way, the numbers and facts I've presented here are not my own estimations. Rather, this video was based on articles written by mainland Chinese that are available to the public. That's all for today. Thank you for watching. See you next time.